I'm quite happy to work with Michael. No, I'm joking. Thank you for being here, Michael. It's a pleasure. I want to talk about something that is basically very fundamental to all of what we do. And I'm not going to be talking about rocket science, but I hope I'm going to be talking about something that's close to all of us in tertiary education. But we need to think about it constantly and creatively. My name is Graham Jones. Saraf gave me an introduction. I want to say we're going to continue this international theme, although I'm quite complicated. I was an Australian, born in Africa, one child born in South Africa, one in Zimbabwe, have lived in Australia for 30 years, but all the rest of my family have traditionally lived in England and Wales. So I'm a very complex person from my background, but I'm very happy to be Australian, and I'm very passionate about Australian cricket and the Australian rugby team, the Wallabies, and on top of that, if you know anything about Australian rules football, the team that I follow is the only team to follow Collingwood. I want to speak about a program that we commenced in the business school about 5 years ago called Steps to Success. Now, if you look at the abstract of what I'm going to be talking about, we know that attrition and progress are the twin challenges that present themselves to academics and administrators alike. A lack of progress leads to attrition, and that leads to a lack of revenue. It leads to a breakdown of the student's learning experience. It leads to a lack of skills ultimately in the community that the community expected to be there through the provision of taxes, particularly if the universities are funded through the government purse. In the ever-increasingly competitive higher education environment, universities are looking to attract more and more first-year students. Every year, thousands of domestic and international students enter Australian universities, as they do around the world. In 2006, 18.5% of students who started a bachelor's degree that year were no longer at the university by the end of that year. And in 2009, that number had grown to 30,000. That's a significant number of students who are not going to experience what a tertiary education would have meant for them. There's a tremendous loss to the community, not to mention the loss to the universities involved. Now, we had a review of tertiary education in Australia, or higher education, conducted by Professor Denise Bradley, the retired VC of the University of South Australia. And that review recommended an ambitious target of raising the proportion of 25 to 34-year-olds with a degree or higher qualification in Australia from 29% to 40% by 2020. Unless attrition is seriously addressed, I think this target has little chance of being achieved. I travel to Sweden and Norway quite regularly. I have a sister who lives in Sweden and a very good friend who lives in Norway. And the numbers of 25 to 34-year-olds in those countries runs about 40%, above 40%. And they have dealt with attrition and progress. And I think they have something they could say to us, but that's a separate paper that I might deliver at another time. Just reading something that Adam Shoemaker of Monash University said. He said, I think that an issue, and I put in the word attrition because that was the context in which he is speaking, that has been underdone in the past, but people are increasingly recognising it. It is increasingly taking hold of people's minds because they realise that the hardest thing to do is to recruit students to your university. I know, I spend a lot of time out there spruiking for my university and my school, and I know it's not easy, as I'm sure all of us here today could attest. The first year experience has a lot to do with attrition and early progress. Now, the first year experience as an area of thought has taken on a life of itself over recent years, with a focus on first-year mentors and advisors, the development of social networks, introductory courses, and even the launching, quite recently, of a dedicated academic journal. It's a journal of first-year higher education, academic journal. I mean, this issue of first-year experience, I think every university has a first-year experience group In our university, there's a group of interested and concerned individuals who get together regularly and are doing some excellent work that they try and disseminate amongst other first-year educators. Now, the first-year experience, like most things in universities, when it started, it was by a small group of enthusiasts, but once one university was involved, it wasn't long before it swept through the whole sector. And that first-year experience now is a discussion point. I'm involved in a network of business associate deans of learning and teaching, and it comes up every time we meet, which is twice a year. Flinders University, under our current Vice-Chancellor, Professor Michael Barber, who's here with us today, developed a strategic plan for 2009 to 2014. And under that strategic key strategy to enhancing educational opportunities, the university is committed to complementing new and diverse pathways. If we're going to lift the number of people with an undergraduate education opportunity, we've got to enhance pathways, and that's been enhanced with transition and retention processes that ensure that students, no matter what their background, can achieve academic excellence and graduate with success. Attached to this key strategy is Strategy 2 of the university's Learning and Teaching Plan. And what are those? There are three things that I want to mention there: that enhance and embed orientation, transition, retention programs across the university. That word embed is vitally important because it's easy to talk about things. It's not so easy to embed things in the life of the university. You know, we seem to get with the latest and the best, but sometimes we need to make sure that those things are embedded if we're going to maximise their benefit. Enhance the English language, academic literacy and numeracy skills of our first-year undergraduates. It's a fact of life. If we look to involve increasing numbers of people in the university experience, we find that basic skills, and I know in the business school, we've heard from a legal friend today about that letter. I could bring you a box of emails that I find quite illegible. My colleague, the school manager, Greg Wright, is here with me today, and we've talked of writing a book, and part of that would be to include these emails, because we struggle at times to find what people are asking us. And let me say, I say to my own staff, it's not from our overseas student contingent, it's from our students across the school. The way they address people: "G'day, mate, how are you going? I got this issue," and then they off into an issue that we need an interpreter to explain to. And I'm not talking because they're using modern young people's, I'm only 21 myself, of course, but young people's language. It's because their grammar, their spelling, and the way they construct a sentence, it must come from some new education system that I've missed out on. And then review the provision of student learning support. Flinders, as I'm sure most of your universities, if not all, have an excellent student learning centre. And what we are seeking to do through the strategy of learning and teaching at Flinders is to provide the balance of support that is centrally provided to what is offered at faculty, school, course, which means a degree in our context, and a topic, which means a subject level. Now, Flinders Learning and Teaching Plan speaks to the importance of providing strategic academic orientation and transition programs. Now, if you go to the literature, and I initially started with a list of papers, and I thought that would bore you, because I thought everybody else would bring a list of papers, but I'm glad they haven't, because I've only got one in my presentation. It's a paper that is quite seminal in this issue of attrition and dealing with the first-year learning experience and the importance of orientation and transition programs. It's back from 2001, but the literature is now proliferating on this issue. So what did we do in the business school? It's very interesting, and you heard me mention in our strategic plan, there was the word success for undergraduates. Well, I'm glad that the word success was in our program before it was in the strategic plan, and it came out of a banana. I went to all our undergraduate classes talking about our transition program, which I think they thought they were in some program for transport or something. They weren't sure what we were talking about. I explained it to every class of first year, and I took a banana with me. And I said, the student who comes up with the best title for this program receives a prize. And I said, it's a banana. Well, of course, they all laughed. Nobody came up with an answer. So I called it Steps to Success. Half the staff told me I was crazy. The other staff thought it was brilliant. And so I went with the people that agreed with me, and we called it Steps to Success. See, all students want to be successful, but many of them need to take steps to being successful. And so that's what we called it. And that program has taken a different approach to many programs in the provision of orientation and transition support. It's a kind of back to the future program that is showing positive signs of dealing with those twin challenges faced by us all of attrition and progress. And I could bring you the data that we get out of our key performance indicators, which are showing we are being able to deal to some extent with those attrition and progress issues. And also it has a very positive outcome. It's providing, we believe, from some surveys we've run, a more positive first year experience. So the Steps to Success, a different approach. It had a background in 2008. The faculty came to us by some money allocated through the through the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, of some money to put together some transition strategies at a school level. And at a school, we were offered a small grant, Mr. Vice Chancellor, a small amount of money, and out of that we were able to do what I called our first year transition program. Now, looking at the report to prepare for today, it was a report I wrote for our executive dean. I might add it was a very ambitious program. When I look at the long objectives, that long list of objectives I wrote up, no wonder the people who participated were a little bit jaundiced when I gave it to them. But the university at that time was very much focusing on what we call at-risk students. Students who were at the risk of becoming an attrition statistic. And why students at risk, and can you reduce that at-risk nature of that student, and then you can reduce attrition. Now, what is Steps to Success at its core? There are three things we believe are vital if students are going to be successful. The first thing, they have ability. Well, we believe our students do have ability, otherwise they wouldn't be in the school. If they didn't have basic ability, they wouldn't be in the program. You need a minimum ability to be accepted into our courses in the business school. The second thing, they have to have commitment. Now, only they can make that. Now, we try and encourage this through a range of activities, and we have done over many years. We have a dedicated student program advisor. In the past, academics used to advise on programs. So somebody in accounting advised on accounting, and somebody in international business on international business, and somebody in economics at economics. And we started to think that was a waste of academic time, because academics' time is costly. We need more research output. How are we going to deal with this? And so we appointed a dedicated student program advisor. And the interesting thing is, students now go to see him because he's created a relationship with them. He becomes their first port of call. If they fail a topic and need to restructure their course, if they need to go off into a military call-up and are not going to be there for a semester, how do they deal with that in their academic program? So having a student program advisor embedded in the school has been very helpful. Orientation functions. I've had a bit of criticism for providing sausages and beer for our students. Light beer, might I add. Everybody laughs because I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink alcohol at all, but I'm the one spruiking my management to provide a beer for the students. It's amazing what students will do for a beer, let me say light beer, very low alcohol, and a sausage. And we've been able to get 500 students out at a lunchtime, meeting with staff, and they mix and start to form relationships. Peer mentors, we've appointed Saraf with international students particularly as developing a peer mentor process. Engaged teaching staff. I've been working with our staff to get them to understand how important this issue of attrition is. And one of the ways is to get the staff engaged in their discipline, in the process of teaching, and with the students. And the other thing we've sought to do in the school, as I'm sure we all believe we are, is can-do kind of people. But I think in academia it's easy to be cannot-do kind of people. We're all short of resources, short of money, short of people. We're in a huge competitive environment in our city. There are 3 universities. There's been a belief there should only have been 2. There are 3 business schools. that puts us in a very competitive environment, and you can become quite negative. But I've encouraged, as our dean and others on the executive of the school, is this can-do attitude. So when students come to us with an issue, we can do it. We can fix it. Now, we can't fix it with maybe their solution, but we can do it. Now, we then looked at what and why students dropped out, and we came up with these few things. The first was a wrong degree choice. Now, that's quite a challenge. Now, it's interesting, when I was talking about law, we're in the same building as a law school, and we get quite a few students coming to us who commence law, and we have quite a few students who commence with us and go to law. We have students who commence with us and want to do other programs and vice versa. But students drop out often because they find the degree wasn't quite what they thought about. Now, that is incumbent upon us to do something. We'll talk about that a minute later. Lack of engagement. Students commence their uni experience not engaged. I'll talk about that. Early sense of failure, no peer group, issues around English language literacy and numeracy, intervention, if any, happening too late. Intervention, if any, happening too late. So, wrong degree choice. We've put in good program advice. We've sought to help students make better decisions early on. Notwithstanding, that may mean fewer students doing our degrees, because we think if a student is happy in another program, it's far better for the university, because they might complete their other social science degree rather than opting out of ours early on. Lack of engagement. We follow up on the lack of registration for classes by week 2. We find about 25% of students were not enrolling in any class. They would register. We found them coming to classes, but they weren't enrolled, so they didn't take on any formal assessment. So we've started from week 2. Those students get an email by week 2, and they get a phone call by week 3, and they're called in for an appointment by week 4. And we found that a tremendous help in getting to grips with that early lack of engagement by students. An early sense of failure. Students go to class and they feel they're not making it. We've got all first years now being assessed in some formal way by week 4. And if students are not making it at week 4, they get some encouraging counselling from their tutors, their lecturers, and people in the Steps to Success program. No peer group. We encourage student integration. Those barbecues, people can hide behind their light beer. They can talk with other students. They can talk with staff. It's been amazing how that's helped to build peer groups within the school. Now, issues around English language and numeracy, I want to talk briefly about that in a moment. Intervention, if any, happening too late. We have a commitment to intervene before the student leaves. Now, that's a challenge to us all, because many times the students are on their way before we know they've got the keys in their fingers, as it were. So we need to do something about that. What do we do in Steps to Success? We've got a small dedicated team that focuses their attention on 3 things. Early engagement with the learning process. We found that if you can engage the students from day 1, and so we've worked hard to get them to enroll in classes, to attend their tutorials, to meet with their tutors, to get to know their peer group as quickly as possible. That's the first thing. And we have a variety of strategies in place to encourage us. A high level of English language support provided by a qualified ESL professional in the school, right in our school, 2 days a week. It costs us a lot of money now, but we have a phrase when it's around the school. Students start now telling other students, "Oh, you're struggling? See Don." Don has become a cult figure because he's there, he's in the same room twice a week, all day, and students have found it really encouraging to see him. Initially, students were reluctant to go and say they needed help, and we are having local and international students attending. The last thing is an in-house student advocate multidisciplinary tutor. We've got a retired chief executive of a major corporation. He's got 3 or 4 different degrees. He's got degrees in economics, psychology, accounting, development, and he is an in-house tutor advocate who students from any discipline can drop in and see. He virtually has no time in the time that he's available to us now, because students are knocking on his door all the time. He acts as a link between the discipline-specific tutor or topic coordinator and the student. He acts as a link between the student and the wider university student learning facilities. He acts as a link between the student and the school administration. And he acts as a link between the student and their sense of impending failure. And we found numerous students who've sat down with Harold and talked about the issues, have written us emails, letters, and have come and seen us and said it was just one interview that turned around their experience. So that's been really encouraging. Just to finish, what are the outcomes? Higher level of success, particularly to vulnerable students. We do have vulnerable students. Who are they? The ones who don't engage, the ones who have an early sense of failure, the ones who have no peer group. Those are the students who we are seeing a turnaround. How do we know? Because we keep the name and student number of every student who comes and sees us, and we follow them up through their grades and how they go. Teaching staff freed up from spending their time with particularly needy students. These students at risk are often particularly needy, and the discipline-specific tutors and topic coordinators, professors, find it really difficult to work with those needy students. Whereas the Steps to Success staff, that's their bread and butter, and their face lights up when a needy student comes in, where some of the others think, oh, not you again. But that's not what happens with the Steps to Success tutors. There's a perceived improvement of English language skills by the students who see Don. The students who see Don, as he's known around the school, they get, not only does he help them understand what the assignment is about or the particularly complex tutorial question, but he helps them structure their thinking, doing mind maps. He's very good at getting students sitting around, and when you've got 10 students in a room, all from different backgrounds, starting to talk about the latest political issue, nothing to do with what they're doing in their course, but they start to use more of the English language skills that they're reticent to use. We found it very helpful to run those sessions. The thing that's encouraged us has been some degree of acclaim across the university that we're doing something right. We've sat down with people at the Student Learning Centre and in other schools and faculties and talked about what we're doing and learned from their experience and try to bring that back into our program. It's a constantly learning experience for us running the program. It's very basic, it's very simple, but I think that back to the future nature of it is making it work. We haven't got it overly complex. We haven't, put in a Facebook and a Twitter and all these modern means of communication. It's face-to-face, somebody who cares for you, somebody who's there to help you resolve your problem. We're being sought out by other schools to help them try and work out and implement similar programs there. What's it costing? Let me tell you, a whole lot more than the $14,000 I got in the first year. The faculty said they've included it in our teaching money. My dean has been very gracious in saying, Graham, it's important. We committed the money there. It does cost money, but I believe the expenditure is not expenditure. Being an accountant, it's investment in the future. Thank you for your time.